Who wins the 2025
F1 World Championship? It's going down to the wire.
The wire.
So unserious.
What better podcast to do than to essentially dive into all three of the championship contenders in a special bonus episode, as the championship showdown, doesn't come around very often. The first since 2021 and the first since we've had three involved since 2010.
Insane. Yeah, as we've said many times before, like, drink it in and soak it up, because this happens so rarely in Formula One.
So I hope you're looking forward to this one. I certainly am looking forward to talking about this. And, just let's feed the hype. Leave a like, subscribe to this channel. If you listen to audio, leave us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, leave us a like, subscribe. Let's get this pumping, because I'm absolutely vibing with this, and it shouldn't be this shouldn't happen. This should not be the case, but it is. And we're going to dive into all three drivers right now. So let's begin with Oscar Piastri. I was going to say in the red corner, but there's more than two drivers in the championship fight. But Oscar Piastri is 16 points behind. He's had 7 race victories in Bahrain, China, Saudi, Miami, Spain, Spa, and Zandvoort, with 15 podiums. So let's talk about Oscar Piastri so far and his season. We thought for 2/3 of this Formula One championship that Oscar just about had it, right? He wasn't home and dry. He wasn't 2-3 race victories ahead, but he had a comfortable buffer. And every time it sort of started to narrow back down and get a bit closer with Lando, a big moment like Zandvoort came in, or perhaps Canada. These moments where you think, okay, well, look, Oscar's clearly just got he's the ice cold man, as everyone was saying. Then it changed, and the last barring Qatar, the last 6-7 races prior to that was championship losing form. So it's not a tale of two halves, it's a tale of 2/3 and 1/3.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, if we go way back to the start of the season, I think no one gave Oscar Piastri a shot, did they, really? Like, all the talk, and there's probably a bit of us being in the UK and the UK media, obviously, and us watching it on UK TV, all the hype seemed to be around Lando Norris. Can he do it this time? Came close last year, didn't do it. McLaren are looking absolutely amazing. So can Lando win the World Championship this year? Oscar had some really good moments, didn't he, in 2024? Looked very quick, but he didn't have that consistency throughout the season. And I don't think many people, I must admit, and me included, really gave him a chance and thought he'd be in the World Championship fight or be able to beat Lando based on what we saw last year. Of course, he's still very new as well, only his 3rd full season. But my word, was he impressive. He won in China, then was in that train in Japan, but then won in Bahrain, won in Saudi, won in Miami, and we thought, wow, Oscar Piastri, where have you come from? And he was absolutely sensational at the start of the year.
He was. After Australia, he went on a run of 8 podiums. Then he had a 4th in Canada, then brings another 6 podiums home after that. And then we get to Azerbaijan. Let's first and foremost, before we talk about perhaps more negative moments of Oscar's season, let's go with what has been his best moment of the season. For me, there's been a lot of highlights for Oscar. As you said, we were kind of sat here going, whoa, Oscar! I was unfamiliar, because there was just so many faultless victories. His best moment of the season, I think in terms of championship swing, it has to be Zandvoort. That was the moment where I imagine he started to believe that he could be world champion. Of course, it took Lando not to have a good weekend with his car failing on him. So I'd say that's up there. But then on the flip side of that, I would say even the first win in China, bouncing back from Australia. I know Lando had a brake problem in China towards the end, but But Oscar was, that was like a statement drive. Of course, Lewis Hamilton won the sprint in China. If you don't forget that, just wanted to mention that one. But the main race was just such a statement drive from Oscar. He won just by just under 10 seconds. I know Lando was managing at the end, but that was like a case of, oh, wow, okay, right. So Oscar could well have won Australia, was at least on the pace. We're now in China, and he's won that one as well. So I'd say there's it's difficult to pinpoint one for sure. It depends how you weigh it up.
Yeah, he's had a lot of impressive wins, which is why it's difficult to pinpoint one moment. I think for me, Zandvoort is, in terms of like, it felt like the championship that he was starting to get his hands on it, but that was mainly because of the Lando failure. It was, of course, a weekend that he was going to win anyway and was brilliant, pole position, fastest lap. In terms of like most impressive victories, that the two that stand out to me are Bahrain, where his teammate was really struggling, made errors, and we thought after the first round, and we'll talk about obviously Lando later, Oscar winning that race in Bahrain, getting pole position, getting fastest lap, a comfortable victory, and Lando having struggles was a real like, okay, we need to seriously consider Oscar Piastri. And the other one that stands out for me is actually Spa, the Belgian Grand Prix, because Oscar Piastri had just lost the British Grand Prix through an error, and he made a fantastic start, overtook his teammate Lando, resisted the pressure from Lando to take that victory quite early-ish in the season, round 13 of 24. Still a long way to go, but he was just looking so comfortable then. I think that was such an impressive drive from him.
It really was, yeah. Spa is a great shout with it being wet to dry and plenty of reasons to make a mistake. Third season, let's not forget as well, for Oscar Piastri. He feels like part of the furniture these days, but he is still very much learning and has been learning a lot this season, no doubt. Let's go to worst moment of the year. Where do you place Oscar Piastri's worst moment?
Well, I'm sure everyone listening, watching right now is going to say one word, and that's Baku. Of course, Baku, on paper, is his worst moment. For him to look like it was so comfortable for him, really. After Zandvoort, we thought the championships won. A lot of people were saying, the championships won. We said never count it out, but it was obviously more than likely that he had a great opportunity to win it and was looking comfortable. And he just had the absolute stinker of all weekends to crash in qualifying, crash in the main race as well, on the first lap, jump the start as well, and drop all the way to the back. It really doesn't get much worse than that. But it's an insane thing to say that I'm not actually going to pick it as the worst moment of the year, because he was there with Lando. And I think the most shocking thing for me was Austin, when he got to Austin and his pace was absolutely nowhere. And it was like, why is there this massive gap now? And it's something he continued into, of course, Mexico, Brazil. And I think that was a weird one, because Baku, it was obviously awful, had a really, poor run, but he was matching Lando in terms of pace before, of course, he crashed and had a nightmare.
There's so many, sadly, unexpected lowlights for Oscar over the last 7 or 8 races. I have to lock in Baku. There's no other weekend that comes close, because literally everything went wrong. From there on, he has not, or had not been on the podium until Qatar. That is, a disaster in terms of the fall off of form. But then, there are some medium lowlights as well of just the pace. But crashing in the sprint in Brazil, crashing in the sprint in Austin, of course, gets away with it with the fact that he took out Lando as well. Although now Max Verstappen is the closest challenger to Lando, so is it really that good at all these days for Oscar when he is now behind Max in the championship? We talk about this 104 points. That 104 points was to Oscar Piastri, the Max Verstappen deficit.
Course,
Max is now ahead. So Max has gained 108 points on Oscar, which is
insane.
Ridiculous. I really hope for his sake he's learnt why he's had that stint of 6 or 7 races where he wasn't on the pace. Because if that becomes a consistent trend, or if the end of the season just isn't that good for him, he will struggle to bring a world championship over the line. He is in only his third season, as we say, so there's plenty of time for him to continue to develop and learn. But yeah, quite a few lowlights to mention, but Baku definitely takes the title that you don't want as worst moment of the year. So we're going to also look at the thing that could potentially have cost him the title. We'll do it for the other two drivers as well. May well be similarly linked to worst moment of the year, but for me, of course, we have Abu Dhabi to go. Qatar could well have been the thing that changes it all. I know it would be 12 points to Lando that he'd still have to make up in Abu Dhabi, but we could well reflect on that one. Baku is, of course, the one that's at the top of my list again for this, because it was a disaster. But then again, at the same time, was it that many points lost, considering his
Lando
pace?
Didn't.
No.
Lando didn't pick up.
And Lando didn't pick up many, but in terms of he wasn't running in the top 3, 4 and then crashed. He was struggling for pace anyway. So then you look all the way back to the first race of the season. When you look at actual points lost to your championship rivals, Australia is probably number one, because Lando finished first and Max finished second. Of course, that is the first race of the season. It feels like so long ago. But if we're pinpointing moments where big point swings have happened, that's one of them. Of course, the retirement is a big swing in Max's favour in Azerbaijan. And then from then on, obviously, we've spoken about that sort of last third of the season. So for me, it still has to be Baku for now, but Australia gets a notable mention.
I've got to throw Monza into the mix. For me, I think there's two sides to it. Yes, in terms of points, it's not really a huge amount. You're just swapping between second and third. But I am adamant that something shifted with Oscar after that moment. Because you look at his form. First, third, first, third, first, fourth, second, first. And then Monza. Then it's retired fourth, fifth. You can literally pinpoint the Italian Grand Prix as the moment where his form goes.
Yeah.
And some people will say, you've got to deal with these things and that's part of being a driver. But his form fell off so badly after that moment. And it's a moment that, is so controversial and could still well be controversial if he loses the title by a handful of points. Because the switch, of course, with Lando with the slow pit stop, he fully believed that they shouldn't have switched, and it put him in a really unfair position. And I think the whole media pressure and fallout and everything over the team want Lando to win now. Oscar's number 2 driver can't have helped his mentality and everything going into the next few races.
Yep, that's a very fair point. Without that switch, all three are separated by 10 points. Oscar would be 1 behind Max, and Lando would be 9 ahead. That is of Max Verstappen. That is even crazier.
It's crazy.
What a crazy scenario to talk about and to think about.
I also want to throw the thing I teased in driver ratings now of a scenario.
Oh, yes.
That might.
Yeah, you left us on a cliffhanger.
Piastri. I did.
What is it?
Is it weirdly better for him to be further behind Max Verstappen, so Max Verstappen has to throw everything on the line against Lando? Because realistically, the only way Oscar can win the title is if they both DNF. And if Max Verstappen goes for a dive bomb and takes out Lando Norris, is he doing that if he's further behind in the title, or Oscar Piastri's closer and stuff? So in a weird way, I think that is Oscar's chance to win the title, that there's a collision. And maybe, and we saw it with Sebastian Vettel, with Mark Webber and Alonso, 2 drivers focusing on each other in the title. We've seen it before where the forgotten driver can sometimes benefit from that the 2 drivers are focused on themselves.
Yes, so he's 16 points behind Lando, which means he would need to win and Lando finish no higher than 6th.
If they collided and both retired, basically Oscar just has to finish 2nd on the road.
Yes, if they both retire, which is unlikely, right? That's quite a large collision that must happen to take both drivers out of the race. If you think collisions can just be a front wing change.
A bit like Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri at the first corner of last year's Grand Prix. Just throwing that one into the mix.
Yes, indeed. I hear your point. I don't
Obviously,
think Oscar Piastri is also thinking that should Oscar be ahead of Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen is treating Oscar Piastri just like he would Lando Norris, and he is dive bombing the life out of him no matter what. So I don't think it changes much. Unless it's Lando, Max, Oscar on the grid, that's the top three, then yes, you can expect some Max shenanigans, 100%. And finally on Oscar Piastri, percentage of how likely he is to win the title. So it will add up to 100% across the three drivers. I am locking in for Oscar Piastri a 10% chance of winning the World Championship. It is a massive outside shot, and it's going to have to require something crazy, as we've mentioned. So 10%.
I will go for 4%.
Oh, for God's sake. Why couldn't you just make it easy? Why couldn't you have done it in divisions of 5%?
I'll go 5%.
Because you're going to then come to the end and it will come to 121%.
Hey, I got a C at GCSE math. I'll go 5% then.
5%. Okay. All right. Sebastian Vettel has won from further back, so we shall see.
True.
Okay, let's head to Max Verstappen. He is 12 points behind the championship leader, Lando Norris, with 7 race victories. Japan, Imola, Monza, Baku, Austin, Vegas, Qatar. His wins with 14 podiums. It's been a great season from Max. There's been a couple of lowlights we'll get into, but a lot of highlights in a car that has been very back and forth, up and down, roller coaster sorts of form. But Max has done a brilliant job this season to maximise most opportunities, I have to say. And that's what's brought him into the championship. Yes, McLaren have made mistakes, but it's always been Max Verstappen ready to take any sort of crumbs that the papaya team want to give.
Yeah, definitely. There's two sides to this story. Max Verstappen has been unbelievable this season. Everyone, even his biggest haters are now kind of going, okay, this guy is unbelievable. And he shouldn't be in the title. I do genuinely believe him when he's kind of there on the grid going, I don't think about it too much, we'll just see what happens. Because I think he is literally in that mindset of, well, I'm not in a car that can win the World Championship. And it's only if McLaren are just throwing it and giving it to me. And they're doing a pretty good job of that in the last couple of races, of course. Max Verstappen has been there to pick up the pieces when McLaren have failed. But also, anytime there's a sniff of victory, he's almost always won the race. And that's what he had to do to be any chance of being in this World Championship. And somehow he is. It's genuinely a miracle that he is even in this opportunity at all. Like, not even winning it aside. It's a miracle that he's even taken it to the last race.
Yeah, Max has picked up so many pieces he could build a jigsaw from McLaren. Like, the amount of times he has been able to snatch a few points here and there. That's what world champions do, and that's exactly what Max Verstappen has shown this season and why he is a class above pretty much everybody on the grid. And I'm saying that as a non-Max Verstappen fan, or I don't know what I am anymore, because we're now at the title decider. I wanted the title decider.
You've got
now,
it. You've got it now.
God, yeah. I have a dog underneath me. Hello, Bruno. That scared the life out of me. Right, let's go to what has been Max Verstappen's biggest and best moment of the season. There's definitely highlights to talk about, Tommy. I would say that Japan was a moment where I think even you had a sparkle in your eyes of maybe, just maybe Max could pull off something crazy if he can just stay in this championship fight. You're shaking your head.
Shaking my head as in he's not in the title, but it definitely was like, wow, pessimism. He's done that.
Yeah,
the pessimism, of course.
But there was, at that time, you were kind of clinging on to the hope of if they can just get to Spain when they bring the upgrades, that's when they might be able to do something pretty awesome. I would say Austin was a perfect weekend from him. Clean sweep, brought himself somewhat in the background, even though still not close enough to really consider him a championship protagonist fully. And then, dominating Las Vegas was another one that you have to throw in there. And then, Qatar was a McLaren presence, so I'm not going to put that as the highest moment. I think Japan, beating McLaren when they were in peak form, and I think probably had the biggest gap, in my opinion, to the rest of the cars, because McLaren came up the blocks firing. They had an unbelievable car. I think Japan is probably my the sort of best moment for Max this year.
It's definitely up there. Japan was insane. I think that was one of those moments where we started the season and it felt like Max Verstappen, it was all about can he get podiums and things. I think the first race in Australia, him finishing second, was more the fact that it was a wet race, and I can't believe he almost won that. It was insane because the McLaren was so clear. And then equally, the start of that season, we had Liam Lawson in the second Red Bull, qualifying 20th every race, and we just thought this Red Bull is an absolute dog, and how is Max Verstappen even going to be able to get a podium in it? So for them to win the Japanese Grand Prix was insane. Imola,
I just want to add,
Imola.
I just want to say Imola.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't mention it. The move at Imola. It feels so long ago. It's been a long season. It's so long ago, but that move at Imola, it's the kind of this is what you get with Max Verstappen. Other days he slams into the side of someone, and we all go, "Oh, he's a crazy driver. It's Mad Max." Blah blah blah. But yet, when he does these moments that work. And a lot of the time it does work with him. That's why he's won so many races. It's unbelievable. And yes, Oscar Piastri hit the brakes early, but no, you cannot tell me anyone else on that grid makes that move.
No.
It's absolutely sensational. It's a move that I will remember for the rest of my life in F1.
Yeah,
I remember it took my breath away. One of the best moments as a Max fan I've ever seen.
I challenge you to find me a better opening lap move. It was 1 centimetre away from Mad Max. Oh my God, he's done it again. He's flying over the sausage curbs and things like that. But it wasn't. It was a perfect move. And yeah, that's definitely up there as one of the best moments of the season, I guess I was thinking. What's been the worst moment of Max Verstappen's season, Tommy?
Spain is definitely the worst moment for Max Verstappen. It was a moment of rage. I think he's very lucky that he didn't receive more. I understand why he was absolutely fuming at the situation, because there was so much tension going on in that team with the Christian Horner stuff. The fact that his own team had messed up the strategy, which put him in that situation. He banged wheels with Leclerc. George Russell overtook him illegally, and his team were telling him he needed to let him through, which wound him up even more. And it was just basically a series of moments for a driver that gets very hot-headed anyway and has these moments of rage. And yeah, it was his poorest moment, one of, if not the biggest in his whole career as a driver, to crash deliberately like that. We didn't know that would mean anything at the time, of course, did we? Because he was so far out of it.
No, we didn't know, but I guarantee we spoke about it at the time of, well, he better not lose the title by 9 points. He better not lose the title by 9 points, yeah. And he might well lose the title by 9 or less points. Of course, mine is Spain. But for worst moment, yeah, Spain, the fact that he was just uncontrollable in that moment, to send it into the side of George Russell was unforgivable. I am also of the opinion that I'm surprised that he got away with what he did, which was, I think it was a 10-second penalty, wasn't it? I think it was just a 10-second.
It was 10 seconds, which still got him a point. Obviously, the field was bunched up because of a safety car, so it...
Yeah, when he realistically used his car as a weapon. Yeah. But Max himself has reflected on it and said that it was something he regrets, which you do not get out of Max.
That's when you know it's a bad moment, when even Max admits something.
Exactly. So yeah, that definitely is the worst moment of the year for me. Now, what moment could be the thing that costs him the title? The moment where Max Verstappen lost the title was Austria. The only time that he has retired is Austria. Every other time he has finished the race. I'm not saying it's his fault, but when we're talking about big moments in the championship where Max could have scored a decent amount of points, third, fourth, fifth. There was definitely a good amount of points on the table. That's it. That's the only sort of blemish on his season-long record, apart from Spain that we've spoken about, which of course is also a factor, definitely. And then Hungary being the place where he finished P9. So, but for me, I'm going to say Austria. It's unlucky, and it's Kimi Antonelli, but I'm not blaming Kimi Antonelli. It's just something that happens, and yeah, that's cost him an opportunity to be pretty much level on points with Lando going into Abu Dhabi.
For me, the moment he lost the title was when McLaren built their car and Red Bull built their car. Because at the end of the day, that...
I love how you were ferociously shaking your head at the fact that he lost loads of points at Austria.
Well,
and your answer is when they built the car.
Well, that's true. It's true. That is when they lost the title, because they've not had a competitive car enough, and I completely agree with him that he shouldn't be in this title race. And even if he wins the title in Abu Dhabi, it's obviously a slim chance, but even if he wins it, it's for me, it's more that McLaren have lost it because of how many points they've thrown away. Miami, China, all these races where he couldn't compete, where McLaren have been quick at every single race, and obviously they've thrown points. I will throw Brazil into the mix, because this is my biggest argument to Austria and Spain, right? And it depends how you look at it, because I understand that you can look at the end of the year, and there will be people, and some people will say that it's copium for me, that I'm like, you can't really say that, because I understand why some people believe that is the case. But when these kind of things happen in May, June, whatever, you can't, you never know how the title's going to go, whereas when it gets later on into the season, you're driving with the championship in mind and kind of knowing a bit more what's going to happen. And for me, so that is why I'm more gutted about Brazil. Two sides to it. One, the pit stop, which again, they shouldn't have pitted because they had to roll the dice and try something different. Yeah, probably would have finished second, but at that point, you're basically giving the title to Lando Norris without trying to stay out and block him and try and do everything to win this world championship. So Brazil is a tough one, but it's a weird answer, but I'm sticking to it. That the moment the thing that's costing him the title is that he hasn't had a car to compete.
Because Max is so perfect.
Well,
that's
he's
Tommy
not.
fanboy.
He's not, though, is he?
Tommy, give me a moment where Max lost the title. You can't cop out and say Red Bull didn't build him a car and Max is perfect.
Brazil.
So Brazil. Okay, so you're blaming the strategy team. All right, I see you.
No, because Max didn't make it through either, did he, into the session?
True, yeah. He could have made it through the Q2 at the very
my
minimum.
words.
Right. Percentage. The big percentage. The percentage we've been asking you for the entirety of the season. We're now incorporating it into this wonderful podcast. I'm going to lock mine in first, that the percentage likelihood of him winning the title is 25%. That is my number. Tommy, over to you.
So I've thought more about this after the excitement, and you'll be shocked to hear
it's gone down. Oh, what a surprise!
10%. 10%. I think it's quite... I was looking... So, obviously the excitement of him making it to the final race, I was incredibly excited. But looking where Lando needs to finish now, it would require, a failure, an engine failure or something.
Just a failure from McLaren, mate. It finishes exactly the same order as Qatar, and Max is world champion.
But let's not forget, Max finished way off. Abu Dhabi last year, Lando was exceptional. McLaren, it's one of Lando's best circuits. McLaren are very good around there. I do think there's a chance.
Lando has to get it over the line to win his first world championship. If I'm going to be a glass half full, it could be quite exciting.
Yeah. No, it will be exciting because he can do it. He can do it. Oscar can do it. There's so many scenarios, as I mentioned. They could collide, and Max is going to go for everything, but he needs to somehow win the race, and yet Lando finish down the order. It's almost like that Lewis Hamilton situation in 2016 where he backs up the entire field to try and shift Rosberg down the order, because the reason it's so low is because I just don't see a scenario where Lando isn't on the podium in Abu Dhabi, because such
just
a good
like
track
you
of his.
must have never seen a scenario where Lando didn't finish on the podium in Qatar or get disqualified in Las Vegas.
McLaren can't screw it up every race.
They can't do it for the final one. Let's head to Lando Norris. The championship leader has 7 race victories as well. All 3 of them do. The victories came in Australia, in Monaco and Austin, in the UK, Silverstone, Hungary, Mexico and Brazil. He has 17 podiums to his name this season. And Lando Norris should, in theory, we should be talking about him being world champion right now if it wasn't for McLaren. We know that. We've said that many times on the podcast already. But, Lando's season, on the face of it, has not been the easiest for him. He's had moments where he struggled with the car, with the handling, whereas Oscar was thriving, especially in that sort of from race, what would you say? Well, as soon as Oscar went on that streak from Bahrain, that was when Lando was just not able to get on the same sort of form as Oscar. Overall, he has put together a great campaign, for sure. He's had 3 no-point scores, of course, one being the disqualification, the other 2 being Canada, which was absolutely his fault, and Zandvoort, which absolutely wasn't his fault. I don't know how Lando each week that McLaren let him down, that he just resets.
What must be going through his head right now?
Yeah, how does he have confidence going into the last race? I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy. The season that Lando's had has been so bizarre, really. The story of his season has been Lando essentially winning in Australia, resisting the pressure from Max while Oscar went off, and thinking, oh, look, that's a really good drive from Lando. Like, he can resist this pressure. And then going into a run where, like, China, Bahrain, Saudi, he was making mistakes and things. Like, Bahrain, he made some errors. Saudi crashed in qualifying, where obviously Oscar won the race. And there was obviously a lot of talk about, like, oh, can Lando actually do this? He's really struggling now. And it looked like Oscar was the top McLaren driver. And then, it gets even worse in Canada, where he collides going for a move on his teammate. And thankfully, not for him, but thankfully for the team, he doesn't take Oscar out the race. But then he does go on this, great run. And then it all goes wrong again in Zandvoort, where you think this is going to be really hard for him to catch Oscar Piastri now. He falls behind
in Canada, doesn't he? And then we question. That was the moment. I remember so many people jumping on Oscar's going to be world champion. He's going to do this. Lando's making too many mistakes. Yada yada yada. Lando then bounces back with a first, second, first. Just about puts him back in like contention with Oscar, and then his engine fails.
Yeah, and in Zandvoort, the crazy thing is after that, obviously there's the contentious moment in Monza. But we then went into Baku, and of course, all the headlines were that Oscar had a really, really poor race. But Lando was getting a lot of stick, and I guess quite rightly, that he didn't make the opportunity, he didn't take that opportunity of his title rival, because Max was out of it at this stage, bagging as many points as possible. He was stuck behind other cars, he wasn't making moves. And then he kind of went into this kind of phase in the next couple of races where he was almost like this silent, like, championship contender, where all the talk was, can Oscar hold on, or is Max going to win? And we said that's going to help Lando, I think, massively. And since then, he's been brilliant.
Let's go to his best moment of the season. What was the standout for Lando where we thought, damn, he's got it? For me, it's been towards the end of the year, for sure. Brazil was fantastic from him. It was such a difficult weekend. You had horrible conditions, a place that craziness happens, and Lando could have easily succumbed to the pressure of having to get this title across the line. So Brazil is 100% a vote for me. And then again, I kind of go all the way back to Australia as well, as a moment where he took it to Max Verstappen and he won in the rain. I remember there were some mistakes on the way to winning. A few things we went, oh, or maybe not. But he won there, and that was kind of a moment of, right, Lando is here to play, and he's here to take this potential championship. But I think if I'm going to choose one, it has to be Brazil.
I will go between Mexico and Brazil for me, because as we mentioned, he'd kind of quietly gone under the radar, and he was still in that championship fight. He didn't have the amazing form that Max did, but he was taking points out of Oscar consistently, and had a lot more pace than Oscar. And then he goes into Mexico, and I think it's Mexico. He got an amazing start, which is something that's been his Achilles heel. He didn't worry about, and Mexico's a very, very difficult track to basically lead from from being on pole position into turn one. Wins the race from pole, and now it looks like, okay, he's looking very good. Then you go into Brazil, and yeah, Brazil is such a strong moment, because there was all this talk of like, it's raining, it's Brazil, of course Max is going to win. And actually, he wins the sprint, he wins the main race, takes pole position. Absolutely brilliant form.
Let's go to worst moment of the year for Lando. Tommy, what are you going to lock in?
There's a few. Obviously, we mentioned Baku. The funny thing about Baku is that if he wins the title by a few points, these kind of non-risky moves where everyone said, oh, he's not going for the moves, he's not doing it here. And this is how a Formula One championship plays out, doesn't it? Like these moments where it's like, oh, if you miss out by a few points, if he'd overtaken here, he would have done this or would have done that. I think you've got to go back to Saudi, the crash in qualifying. Then he went into the race, and I think he spent a long time unable to pass Charles Leclerc. Meanwhile, his teammate is just romping home for victory to make it, his third victory of the season. And that was a really low moment for Lando, I think, just from the fact that his form had really dipped after a brilliant win in Australia, and you thought, okay, he has turned it around, and then went back into this kind of error-prone driver again.
So my moment for worst event for Lando this year has to be Canada. I think the move he pulled on Oscar was really poor. Crashes into the back of his teammate, loses, I think it was a P5. I think it was P5 at the time. So in terms of point swings, that's 10 points just lost through a fault that was completely on him. It depends how you package it. So that's my error, I would say, of the year for Lando. In terms of worst moment that might not be his fault, is Las Vegas. Fully. He did everything he needed to do in Las Vegas to have enough of a championship lead going into the last two rounds, and then
on a
it was
track
just
they're not that good at either.
Taken away from him. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, he did absolutely everything, and to remove all those points away from him due to a team error is a disaster. So that's from that side. But in terms of something for Lando's performance, I would say Canada. Right. What moment could be the thing that costs him the title? I feel like these can sometimes blur the lines between worst moment of the year and the thing that costs him the title. Las Vegas. If Lando does not win the World Championship, it is Las Vegas and it is Qatar. Qatar is obviously a strategic on the go error from McLaren, which I still do not believe that they thought it through at all. Clearly they didn't, because they were the only team not to pit. But Las Vegas is such an error where obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing, but why are they risking it anyway? Like, there's clearly been an oversight there from McLaren and how they look at the cars and all the telemetry they get. They know the load that is being put through the car. They can see the cameras. They can see the sparks. Why are they risking it at all? Even if they finish 4th and 5th, 5th and 6th in Vegas and lose all the pace by running the car a bit higher to not run the risk of being disqualified, it doesn't matter. Lando has a much bigger gap going into the last two races. So Las Vegas will be my answer.
Yeah, there'll be people, the Lando Norris crew of like just hating on him for every single reason unfairly, saying like, oh, he lost points here, lost points there. But realistically, let's say like Canada, for example. But realistically, he's had the engine failure, where that's a McLaren failure on him. Vegas, the failure by McLaren, and then Qatar again, where he's finishing third. So it's not going to be a huge points difference in Qatar, really. But obviously, it's still a few points through a McLaren blunder. It's got to be, the failure in Zandvoort. To have a mechanical failure when you're running P2 is big in a championship fight. And Vegas, because, it has to be Vegas. If they lose this title, unless they do something again in Abu Dhabi, the 2007 Lewis Hamilton kind of, why have they left him out on the canvas of his tyres when all he had to do was cruise home to a P5 and win the championship? And equally, Lando had the championship won at Brazil, and the only reason that could have brought Max in is if he won the race and he got a no score. And Lando finished second on the road at a track that McLaren aren't particularly good at, drove a great race, brilliant pole position in the wet, and bagged 18 points, and then they were taken away through an error. So at the end of the day, Max, of course, I want Max to win.
Really?
Being a Max Verstappen fan, shock.
What?
But what I just want to say, it would be absolutely devastating, for Lando to lose it by another McLaren error again.
It would be awful. It would feel, terrible for Lando, and that's not how we want to see this championship play out, because I think it will leave, probably not for you, a bitter taste, Tommy, but it will, in some ways, when you analyse the last few races, you'd feel like Lando was kind of robbed of a championship that was going to be his, and he's lost it through no fault of his own. But fingers crossed, McLaren sort it all out. They do a 1-2 for their sake, of course, not for entertainment's sake, and then the championship isn't questioned as to who deserved it, who didn't deserve it, etc., etc. Although that conversation will happen
unless Lando wins the title by 5 points, and then the Oscar Piastri Monza switch will be World War III in the media.
As long as Oscar would have to finish 5 points behind, wouldn't he? Rather than
that's what I said. 5.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so,
5.
no, you
five.
said to win by 5, but obviously from Oscar Piastri as opposed to Max Verstappen, who is the closest competitor. Tommy, I know you're glass half empty, mate. He is second.
He's out of the title
in the championship. Right. Well, speaking of percentage, if you can do maths, we'll find out if Tommy can.
I can't.
My likelihood for Lando Norris winning the World Championship in Abu Dhabi is 65%. The reason why it's no higher than that is because I don't trust McLaren as far as I can throw them right now. And if Lando has a working team that does everything he needs them to do in Abu Dhabi, it'd probably be up at 90%. But this is factoring in everything, 65%.
And mine is almost 90%, 85%, if I've done the maths correctly. Hopefully.
Yeah, 5 plus 10 is 15, yeah.
Good stuff. Look, it's in his hands still. It was in his hands, and this is the only reason it's not 100%, is it was in his hands in Vegas, it was in his hands in Qatar. And yeah, it's changed completely, of course. And it can only really be a McLaren failure that could do something to stop him winning this title, in my opinion. Because
failure of the car or operationally? Yeah,
operationally, because the reason I think it's so low as well is Abu Dhabi is a track where you make an error, you're just going off into the runoff. So it will take something crazy from McLaren maybe or something for it to go wrong for Lando, because it's his best, one of his best, maybe even his best on the calendar, along with Austria, in terms of his performances there. And obviously he was brilliant there last year, won comfortably, and drove so well. So yeah, it's surely got to be Lando's, but this season has thrown so many curveballs, which is why it's not 100%.
And that is it. Thank you everybody for tuning in to this little special bonus episode chatting about the 3 title protagonists. Will it be Oscar Piastri? Will it be Max Verstappen? Or will it be Lando Norris, who takes home the 2025 Formula One World Championship? Tommy, final thoughts.
Final thoughts. I just can't believe we're in this situation with 3 drivers winning the title.
All 3 have won it.
sorry, being in the title, my brain is
3-2. They've all
done.
won it.
They've all
Just
won
take it all. They can have a
Yeah.
third of the trophy each.
That's what McLaren would like, wouldn't they? Really, just give it to both their drivers, then they don't have to have a worry.
I
And
think they
Max,
wanna give
because
the
they
whole
also
thing to
want
Max, to
they
be
want
fair.
they want Max to have it as well.
Give it to
so
Max, so then neither of them have anything. And then that is fair.
That is fair. Yeah, true. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Come on, Max. Come on,
I'm
McLaren.
11% now.
There's one more in you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Bye.
Goodbye.